Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
The Innovative Thinkers episode. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. How did one woman find the power of self-expression and the confidence that come from wearing a beautiful square of silk? Sarah Summers, founder of Desea, shares her love for the versatile and enduring nature of silk scarves. Welcome, Sarah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to have this opportunity to chat with you, Dr. Richards.
You know what? I like to start with an icebreaker before we even get started. So why don't we just start with that? Tell us, what was your first job?
Well, technically my first job was probably babysitting my siblings, but my real first job where I received a paycheck. So I grew up in Iowa and I worked at a fine gift store actually that sold china, crystal, silverware, like all the kinds of gifts that people would register for their wedding and beautiful items for the home. And that was really my first professional experience working in retail, helping customers and really learning about, beautiful quality items and home decor that can, bring beauty to your environment.
If you could acquire an instant skill, what would it be?
Oh, especially now in this role, I wish I was like a social media marketing maven. That's what I want is to know all of those skills cold.
What book are you reading right now?
I am reading a book called This is Marketing by Seth Godin, and it's excellent. And I'm happy to chat more about that if you'd like.
Well, interesting that you would mention Seth. He was also an innovative thinker, and he was a guest on our show. So that would be airing soon. That podcast will be releasing soon. So,
oh, great.
So he is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Who is someone, Sarah, you really admire?
Well, I have had the good fortune of having several amazing mentors in my life, but in addition to those mentors that have personally coached me along my professional and personal journey, one kind of famous public figure that I look to a lot is Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. I just feel that her journey and what she's built and created in the service of making women feel confident and beautiful is absolutely fantastic. And I really admire the way that she approaches her business and her clients. So I love following her actively on social media and, of course, watching what she does with her business.
If I'm not mistaken, is she now on Shark Tank?
She is. She's one of the guest judges.
Yeah, I saw that. I love that show. What is your favorite movie?
Well, it's hard for me to narrow it down to just one, but I'm a big fan of Nancy Meyers films. So films like It's Complicated, Something's Gotta Give, The Holiday, they're all beautiful films to watch. And you can kind of suspend reality and just dive into one of the worlds that she's created. They all have really dynamic, interesting female leads typically. And those female leads are, they have flaws like we all do. But through the movies, you can see them go through their own personal journeys of self-discovery, make mistakes and then recover and get themselves, on the life path that they really need to be on. And so for that reason, I've just really enjoyed her movies, and they're ones I go back to again and again.
Hit the treadmill or hit the couch?
I wish I would say hit the treadmill, but I'm probably at this point more of a hit the couch. I love snuggling up with my family and watching a good TV show or a good movie and having a glass of wine. But we are fortunate actually now to live really close to a nature preserve that has great walking trails. So on a good day, you'd probably find me out in nature and taking advantage of that beauty and that quiet and that solace close to home.
Sarah, what food you eat every week, no matter what?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, I'm a pescatarian actually, so my diet is like very, very veggie focused. So I eat a variety of veggies and a lot of veggies every week.
Well, that's going to be great. And speaking of veggies, I'm actually, when you and I get off, I'm doing a Facebook Live on the best protein sources, which I'm sure that you are an expert for those that are plant-based eaters.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, you know what? When I opened up this podcast, I did a very brief bio. But what I'd like you to do is fill in the gaps. Share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business.
Sure. So the journey to this business was kind of a long and winding road, which I'm sure in a lot of instances is a common thread that you see in the guests that you have on your show. I think really the journey to this business started over 20 years ago when I was an undergrad and studying finance and international business at Marquette University. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to study abroad in Madrid and also work abroad in London for a while during my undergrad experience. And for a girl from Iowa, those were amazing, eye-opening experiences, as related to the cultural exposure, the linguistic challenges, moving abroad and being independent and doing things on your own, and also being just exposed to all of the amazing, art and design that Europe had to offer as well. And so that really started to open my eyes. I mean, for example, I studied abroad in Madrid before I had even had my first visit to New York City. So it made a huge impact on me, both of those experiences. And then pretty soon after graduation from Marquette, I actually moved to New York City and started my career in global finance. So that was a more than a decade-long journey working with some of the leading financial services firms and investment firms there in New York and working across a variety of capacities. Everything from investment banking to moving on to more of a firm strategy role where I was able to work in the office of the president of Morgan Stanley at the young age of 27, and then on to working for some larger investment firms where I was able to ultimately end up leading sales and marketing initiatives and investor relations initiatives for those firms. So it was a huge, unbelievable growth experience being in New York from that time period, from the early 2000s, and seeing just really the growth of those industries and being able to participate in it and work with like amazing, brilliant, talented people. And then we felt the call back to the Midwest. My husband also is an entrepreneur and started a firm with a few other partners that was headquartered in Chicago. So we found our way back. And with that move, I had a career shift myself, and I ended up partnering up with two individuals here in Chicago who had been serial entrepreneurs themselves. Really, most of their experience had come in the form of B2B software businesses, and they were interested in teaming up together and investing in early stage technology businesses here in the Chicagoland area. And so I had an amazing 4-year run with them. They really became my mentors, my coaches, almost uncle-like figures to me, if you will. And so I was able to learn a lot about entrepreneurship and a lot about starting a business from not only the two of them, but also all of these young, hungry entrepreneurs that we were surrounded by every day as we were sourcing, diligencing, and making those investments. And it was really during that 4-year period that I was able to, I think, really kind of come to terms with something that I had buried inside of me, which was that I had this incredible drive to be an entrepreneur myself. But for many reasons, I had pushed it aside. And many of those reasons were good reasons. I was given incredible opportunities to grow and develop personally and professionally on that trajectory that I was on in New York. But because I had such amazing opportunities, it really kind of enabled me to push aside this deep desire within myself. But after working with serial entrepreneurs and investing with entrepreneurs for those 4 years, I couldn't hold back any longer. And along the way, this concept for Desata, my business, started formulating. And fast forward to last year, around this time in 2018, And that's when I decided to just do it, to pull the ripcord and to start my own business. And I'm thrilled to have been able to actually do that. And it's been a very, it's been a winding path to get there, but all the things that I've done have enabled me to really get to this point.
We'd love to know what you think. Feel free to drop us an email at fr@francisrichards.com. That's fr@francisrichards.com. Sarah, talk about that colliding into silk scarves. I want you to go deeper in your story. How does this professional woman, investment banker, go into, and then you went into some tech investments. How did you get into fashion and silk scarves? That just seems like, I know investment banking is an excellent foundation for entrepreneurship. And you were talking about the mentors and you decided to go on your own. I'm trying to get that missing link. How do you connect the dots?
It's quite a leap. And I truly understand that. So I definitely, I was a finance major. I was in that industry for a long time. And that was and is definitely a part of me and who I am. But there was this other part of me that I think was going underserved just because I was dedicating so much of myself to that other career trajectory. And that was this more creative side of myself. I also had an opportunity along the way to become involved in several organizations for professional women. And I realized how much I enjoy being with other women. I've had fantastic mentors, but of course, most of them have been male. The industry that I, came from was very male dominated. But I really found over time that I became more and more drawn to the idea of doing something for women that would make them feel confident, make them feel like the best, version of themselves when they went to do whatever it was that they were doing that day or go on any journey that they were going on. And I kept thinking a lot about, what products or what experiences or what things have brought that to me in my life? And is there an opportunity there to share that with others? I've actually always been a silk scarf lover. And, in those early days in investment banking, as I'm sure, a lot of your listeners can relate, it's a very conservative environment. You're mostly wearing, like a navy blue or a gray suit every day. And so as a young woman in that industry, I was always looking for ways to kind of express who I really was and differentiate myself, but of course do it in the context of, what was appropriate for that environment. And silk scarves were kind of that, they filled that gap for me. They were that missing link, and they became this kind of Swiss Army knife of accessories that you could wear all different ways. And I always loved them and started building a collection in those early days. And then, fast forward through that journey that I just outlined for you, and my professional wardrobe changed as I moved into other roles. It was very different being in private equity or at a hedge fund, and then very different again, of course, working with all of these young early stage entrepreneurs in Chicago. In fact, the kind of work uniform, if you will, couldn't have shifted any further away from what I had experienced in investment banking. So, then all the gentlemen that I were working with, they wanted to project that they were the next Mark Zuckerberg. So they had that uniform of the torn jeans and t-shirts and hoodies. And along the way, also, I became a mother, and that requires a totally different kind of wardrobe, if you will, for being on the playground and playing with your child and being active. And as I reflected over kind of all of those sartorial needs that I had and all those shifts that I had over time, the one thing in my closet that was the consistent or the common thread through it all were my silk scarves. And I found, they're just as beautiful with that conservative, suit that you would wear in your investment banking days, or with, they can really dress up and add a lot of spice and variety to, jeans and a t-shirt on the weekend. So for me, they were this this beautiful kind of classic staple in my closet, and they could take me to any of these environments with ease and really make me feel great in the process. It's just very easy to just slip one on as you're running out the door, or pack one in your bag as you're heading out for that business trip. And I decided that this would be a category where maybe I could bring something differentiated to the market and differentiated to my customers and make them feel really fantastic in the process.
Talk about your process for finding these amazing silk scarves. And I definitely would like you, just in the interim, and I know you'll have an opportunity to do it at the end, but someone's listening and they're near their phone and they're like, how do I get to her scarves? So why don't you give them the website now, and we'll give it again, just if someone is like sitting down or whatever and they're like, because I know I'm doing that when I'm listening to podcasts and I'm on the treadmill, but I can still type something in. So why don't you give that address to someone who's listening?
Sure, absolutely. So our company's name is Deseda, and our website is shop, S-H-O-P, Deseda, DESEDA.com. So that's where you can find us. And the journey to creating the silk scarves was it's like a whole story in and of itself. So as you know, from just walking through my resume, if you will, I had never made a product before or manufactured a product before. And that's a totally different world than being in a services business. But it was a world that I was very intrigued by, and, always very drawn to this concept or this idea of what it would be like to create a physical product. And so once again, coming as an outsider into this new industry, I just started hitting the pavement and trying to figure out, if I have this dream or this idea of making silk scarves, I got to find out how I can get that done. And of course, being a scarf lover, I knew that, really the heart of luxury silk production and silk printing still in the world is happening in Italy. And so that's where I started my search. So not only was I making a product for the first time, I needed to find a partner that I could work with in that region. So ultimately, it's just like anything when you're doing something new, you just start making phone calls, reaching out to people, networking, and, one connection leads to another. And I ultimately ended up interviewing and looking at several different production partners, and landed on one that prints all of their silk scarves in Italy and then has them hand finished here in the US. So for all of our scarves, actually, if you look at the edges of them, they're hand rolled and hand stitched, which I just think adds like a beautiful touch of craftsmanship to our product, which I'm really proud of. So I found that partner, which has been, a great business relationship that we've been building over the past year or so. But in addition to that, really the concept of what I was looking to build with Deseda was more of a platform for a celebration of creativity and artistic talent. And ultimately, as we scale this business, hopefully connecting our customers with artists and creative talent that they wouldn't have come across or been connected with otherwise, and vice versa. So there was a whole other kind of work stream or part of this journey to laying the foundation for this business, if you will. And that was, finding artists to collaborate with, and finding artists that, were interested in this concept and this idea of what we were looking to build with the business. And that was actually a super exciting process for me because, as I mentioned before, I felt like this creative side of me had gone kind of underserved for a while. I had found other outlets for it in my personal life, but I hadn't really expressed it professionally. And getting out there and connecting with all of these artists from around the world, really sourcing them, developing relationships with them, and collaborating with them to create our designs and really creating a curated collection of, different styles and different aesthetics of scarf designs from around the world has been a really thrilling and really rewarding process.
Sarah, tell us about the meaning of your name of your business, Deseda.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, when I was talking about my journey to Deseda, that time in my, when I was about 20 years old, when I studied abroad in Madrid, was hugely impactful for me and on my kind of worldview. And the opportunity to learn Spanish, learn another language, and participate in living in that culture was just a great part of my personal growth and development. So I was really inspired to reflect back on that time in developing the name for the business. So Deseda is actually a mashup of like our own kind of original mashup of two words in Spanish. The word deseo means wish, and the word seda means silk. So we mashed those two words together to come up with the term Deseda, which is its own kind of unique name unto itself. And it's really just trying to express that these scarves are little silk wishes that are meant to do exactly what we were talking about earlier, which is, and make the wearer feel confident and chic, and also to celebrate this creativity behind our artists.
Sarah, what are you most grateful for right now in your life?
Well, I have to say it's got to be health and family. Unfortunately, in the past year, there have been it's been really strange, actually. People in my life, some of whom I've been, very close to, and others that I've just started to get to know that have had medical issues. And I think until you have that hit close to home, it's something that we can all take for granted. And so that is something that on a daily basis now I am making an effort to share, express a lot of gratitude for. So I would say health. And then, of course, my family is really, really important to me. And, I'm sure you talk about this with your other guests as well. It's always trying to find that balance between, building a business is a, very all-consuming thing. And then, there's your family as well. And you realize that, you don't really have anything if you don't have the love and the support of those that you care about, and vice versa. And then also, everybody feeling healthy and strong and able to pursue, whatever their goals are. So I would say those are the two things I feel most grateful for now.
And speaking of health, talk about health and entrepreneurship. How do you keep yourself healthy?
Oh, that is such a good question. I would say it's actually a huge challenge because your daily schedule can be so demanding. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a pescatarian. I do think just in general that approach to what you eat every day kind of keeps you typically on maybe a little bit healthier track than you may be on otherwise. So I've been a pescatarian, oh my goodness, I'm losing track, probably for at least 8 years now or so, 7 or 8 years. And I think that's been very beneficial for my health overall. And I think the longer you do it, the more you can feel the impacts of it. In addition, I love Pilates. I happened to discover Pilates personally about 4 or 5 years ago now, probably closer to 5 years ago now. And I just stumbled upon a studio in my neighborhood, and I was curious more than anything. I had never practiced yoga. I had always been a runner in the past, actually. And so Pilates with the equipment, and it was intimidating to me at first, as an outsider looking in. But once I got into it, it's been something that I think has helped me feel a lot stronger and a lot more composed, which is very important, I think, as you deal with the ups and downs of entrepreneurship.
Now, you mentioned that you're a mom and you talked about your husband. He's an entrepreneur also.
Yes.
Now, does your entire family, are they pescatarians or just you practicing pescatarian?
Actually, just me. But I think fortunately for them, they've become really like a lot more meat light, if you will, as a result, just because I do cook most of the meals in our house. So then the meals that I'm cooking, don't have a meat-based component to them. So by default, they end up consuming a lot less meat than they would otherwise. And I think it's actually, I will be honest, I did feel some resistance at first, especially for my husband, because historically he had been a pretty big carnivore. But even if you spoke to him now, he would happily admit that he thinks it's been great for him from a health perspective, and just kind of opening his eyes to the fact that like not every meal needs to center around meat as the main feature. And there's a lot of other ways to still, really enjoy your meal without meat in it. And he actually I said he's an entrepreneur as well, and he has a very heavy travel schedule affiliated with his job as well. So I think, having the confidence to pursue, meat alternatives on the road now that his eyes have been opened to all of these other options has been really healthy for him in trying to strike that balance that's so hard for everyone with both food and exercise when you do travel extensively.
Sarah, is there a social cause connected to your business or your brand?
Yes, there are two missions that we have behind what we are doing. Number one, we really want to scale this platform to be a celebration of creativity and of artistic talent. And it's very important to us that we really highlight and feature our artists and share not only, of course, the beautiful scarf designs that they've created, but of course, tell more of their story as well. What has been the inspiration behind their path for becoming a creative, and, how do they see and think about the world? Because, of course, one of the things that I think can be hugely impactful for people across different industries or across different professional pursuits is really opening themselves to more diverse ways of thinking. One of the things that I have found fascinating and also incredibly exciting about the artists that we've collaborated with thus far is that a lot of them have never done anything in textile design before or fashion-oriented design before. They're illustrators, they're painters, or they specialize in multimedia collages or even photography. And so they, however, see the world differently than a lot of people that I had worked with in the past. Instead of getting on this straight and narrow path and trying to accelerate along that path as quickly as they could professionally, they know already kind of what they're good at, and they know what typical mediums they're drawn to. But they say, I want to push myself. I want to challenge myself. I want to step outside of my comfort zone. I want to do something different. When they heard about DeSeta, or if I reached out to connect with them because I was intrigued in their approach and their process, they said, you know what, I want to pursue this, even though it might be something a little further afield for me, because I want that challenge. I want to go broader. And I think that is such a healthy perspective, regardless of what you're pursuing professionally, is to look kind of horizontally and see what else might be out there for you. So celebrating those artists, giving them a platform, featuring them, and connecting them with others is definitely part of our mission. And then, of course, the other part of our mission is what we spoke a little bit about earlier as well, which is just giving women something in their closet that is unique, it's differentiated, and it's colorful, and it's expressive, and just easy. It's a beautiful quality product with a little TLC. This item can be in your closet indefinitely. It can really become woven into the fabric of what is your personal style. And I just love that about what we are creating, is that it is something that is meant to be enduring and lasting. This is not something that, you have for a season and then it ends up in the landfill. So this is something that you can really cherish and enjoy, and make it really your own in how you style it and how you incorporate it with your wardrobe. So those are definitely two very important parts of what we're building with our brand.
Sarah, this is a brainstorm that just came across as you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about, how they have high teas?
Yes.
And so I'm thinking about, and I'm just going to throw this out. So this is very raw. And I believe this is in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, but American Dowels.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a high tea and you have the artist and you do a mother-daughter tea. And so raising the
adorable.
daughter to understand the value. And you could even have, I know that you and I talked about how your scarves, one design, they're very, I'm not going to see everyone with the same design.
Yes.
But
They're all
that
limited
might be
edition.
Another spin-off. And I don't know, again, this is very just right off the top of my head, where at the high tea, the mother presents the daughter with, if they have a matching scarf or just a scarf at kind of at the high tea.
Oh, I love that concept. Definitely on my wish list for the business was already the mommy and me kind of concept. I
Okay.
hadn't thought of bringing it into the context of, American Girl dolls, or an American Girl doll tee, but my daughter was a huge American Girl doll fan when she was younger and continues to really treasure the dolls. And so I think that that's a fantastic suggestion. And definitely, I think the whole mommy and me concept is very sweet. And you're right, it does start to impart and start a discussion around some of those values associated with the product.
Mm-hmm. And I think if I'm hearing correctly, I think a lot of like kind of something that you cherish. And, parents used to give their china. And I'm hearing young millennials are like, I don't want China, right?
Yep.
So this might be a tradition, something that you start where they're saying, I'm passing down your own and you can pass this to your daughter type of thing.
Ooh, I just love it. I just love it. Well, it's very interesting that you bring that up because part of what informed the development of this whole concept as well was that my great grandparents were actually milliners. So they designed and made hats and they had their own hat stores. And so, of course, at the stores, they sold hats and accessories, everything for the elegantly dressed woman. And last year, before I started the business, but when I was working on developing the concept for my own business, I was at my parents' home and we were going through a cedar chest, which had a lot of belongings of my great grandmothers who had, built and run this business with her husband. And it was amazing. And so I'd have to do the math to remember again what year she was born, but I got to know her very well because she lived to be 98. So I still knew her. I mean, I got to know her into my teens, which was fantastic to have, somebody like her who had been this amazing businesswoman and creative woman, influence the very early phases of my life and of my childhood. But at any rate, we were going through this cedar chest and we were pulling out these beautiful items that had belonged to her and they had remained actually, remarkably preserved. Beautiful long silk gloves, some scarves, little hand embroidered handkerchiefs from when everybody used to use handkerchiefs, and of course the hats as well. So just really, sweet, beautiful items, of course, very elegant. And the thing that struck me was, now some of those items had to be at least 70, 80 years old, and they were still beautiful. And they had been preserved really well. And that's when I knew that if I was going to go down this path of creating a business centered around a product, that it had to be something that would have the potential to be that enduring and that lasting and, have those traditions behind it. So that definitely made a big impact in my thought process on what this business was going to become.
So Sarah, what best describes you? Entrepreneur, thought leader, or innovative thinker, and why?
This is such an interesting question. So I think I have to land on innovative thinker. And the reason why I land on innovative thinker is because I think that's been, that's probably of those three, what I've been most consistently and for the longest period of time. Of course, over the past year, I've been shifting into this role of entrepreneur, but it's very new to me being an entrepreneur. I think I've done things in the past that are entrepreneurial, but it's very different to take that leap and to start your own business. So I think it makes most sense to identify with the term innovative thinker. And I think the reason why I land on that is because by nature, I'm a very curious person, and I always have been. And that curiosity has led me into a lot of, really interesting places in my life, which have then, of course, enabled pattern recognition. And once you have pattern recognition and can blend that with some emotional intelligence, then you can start having those traits of the innovative thinker, of thinking outside of the box, of seeing things a little bit differently and kind of connecting the dots in your own way It's really that accumulation or that blend of your personal and professional experiences with your own unique perspective on the world. And that enables you to see things a little differently. Being able to see things differently was incredibly important in my prior role when I was investing in early stage startups, because a lot of the businesses that we were looking at, like, they might be at the point where they were only just starting to generate revenue or had only acquired their very first customers. And you had to be able to speak with these individuals, evaluate them and their potential as entrepreneurs, and also their vision for their business and what they wanted to build, and how that would marry with the potential market opportunity they were pursuing as well. So very different than the investment banking days where you were, analyzing and evaluating very large scaled, in many instances, global businesses. Instead, these were situations that were very, very early stage, definitely nascent in their development. And you had to be able to, once again, take that pattern recognition you've had from your other prior experiences, both in how you see people and their characteristics and their potential as leaders, but then also the pattern recognition of, does this business model make sense? Does it have a real chance at being differentiated and scaling? And what is this market opportunity that the entrepreneur sees? And can we validate it? Can we see it too? So for all of those reasons, that's why I land on the term innovative thinker. But I think it would be flattering to have any of those descriptions, associated with who you are and how you present yourself in the world.
Sarah, one of the questions I'd like to ask you is, what advice would you give to elevate the experience of the Black entrepreneur? But what I'd like you to really take it from the standpoint from your previous background in investment banking and private equity, and we've noticed, and just talk from that perspective. If someone is saying, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an African American or a Black entrepreneur and I want funding, or I want to get into that realm, get into that under influencers in that realm. Can you speak from that point of view?
Sure, absolutely. I think it boils down to something like that sounds so simple when you say it, but the actual execution of it day in and day out is incredibly challenging. And that's just persistence. I think, especially if you are a high achieving person, if you have big goals, if you're out there and you're really hustling and you're really working hard, we all want everything to happen faster, and we want it to happen on our timeline. And there are going to be, unfortunately, like bumps and twists in the road, and things aren't going to always go your way. And there will be challenges that present themselves. And I feel like it's the people that end up, being truly successful and being able to sustain that success over a long period of time are those that persist. And once again, it sounds like a very simple thing to say, but actually doing it day in and day out for years is a huge challenge. But you need that discipline. You need that focus. Whatever your goal is, if you want to be, a managing director at one of the large global investment banks, or if you want to build a scaled company that you wholly own as an entrepreneur, you need to wake up every single day and put that hat on that you are not going to give up until you get there. And that doesn't mean that there aren't moments that aren't, where you don't feel like you want to, or you may need to hit the pause button and just kind of regroup and take that day off to regain your focus. But that unrelenting persistence and discipline is what needs to be there, and it needs to be there for a sustained period of time.
What problem exists in the world today, Sarah, that you'd like to solve?
Oh, there are obviously a lot of challenges out there. I mean, the one that I would like to reference, and just to the extent that it is connected to our mission at DeSeta, is just, I think, unfortunately today, just things feel complicated. They feel complex. Everybody's trying to balance all of these goals and all of these aspirations and everything that they want to get done. And I just feel that if there's something that you can do to lighten that load, to make things feel a little bit easier, to make things feel a little bit funner, a little bit more beautiful, there's nothing wrong. We spend a lot of time in business talking about pain points and talking about what problem is my service solving? What problem is my product solving for? And I think it's okay to get really excited about something that addresses a pleasure point instead of a pain point. Because those little pleasures or those small victories, or, I think of things like the commercial, the Staples commercial with the easy button. Like when you have those moments in your life when you can hit the easy button, it's so rewarding and it's so uplifting, and it just puts a little pep in your step and makes you, be able to go about your day with maybe a lighter, elevated, happier perspective. And that's why I'm so excited about what we're doing with DeSeta is, just grab that scarf out of your drawer. It's pretty. It feels beautiful. It's a little piece of luxury wrapped around you. It makes you feel chic. It makes you feel confident. It's very plug and play. You can mix it with anything. And yes, it's true. This is not brain surgery, but it is something that can just be a little sweetener to your day. And I think sometimes just having those little sweeteners in the face of all of the challenges that we all have, it can really go a long way in influencing your disposition and influencing how you engage with the world. So I am all about finding little ways to address pleasure points for people in addition to, pain points with the challenges that face in their daily lives.
We'd love to know what you think. Feel free to drop us an email at fr@francisrichards.com. That's fr@francisrichards.com. Sarah, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question that you would have asked yourself? I'd like you to ask the question and answer that question.
The one question I would ask is, where do you ultimately want to take DeSeta? What is your ultimate goal for this business? It is very early stages, and so there's always the short-term immediate goals affiliated with getting a business up and running, but what's the ultimate vision for the business? And the way that I would respond to that is, my ultimate vision for this business is to be known globally as the one-stop shop for where you go if you want beautiful, artist-driven, special accessories and things that are colorful, creative, and chic. And I want to do that in a way that celebrates the design and the creation of the items, and that really makes the wearer feel special and unique. And so I don't intend to stop until we become a household brand that everybody recognizes as, oh, if you want something special, if you want something different, if you want something that celebrates creativity and makes the receiver of that item feel fantastic, then you know that you can go to DeSeta and find that.
Sarah, before we conclude, why don't you share with our audience the best way that they can connect with you and your business?
Sure. So our website is www.shopdeseta.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Shop DeSeta as well. And of course, if anybody would like to reach me directly, they can email me. My email address is Sarah, SARAH, @shopdeseta.com.
Sarah, that's a wrap. Thank you for spending time with us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.